Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat, Astoma Satyamya. तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्युर्मा अमृतं गमय ओम सहनावतु सहनौवनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति शांति शांति. Let's do the Shanti part from this Mandukya Upanishad also. Om Bhadram Karnebi Shnuyam Devah Bhadram Pashyem Akshirjatrah Sthiram Angehe Tushtuam Tastanub Vyashem Devhitam Vidayu Swasti na Indro Vridshravah Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedah Swasti na Takshya Rishtnebi Swasti na Vrispati Dadatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the last couple of classes, we have finished the first 3 verses of this very short Upanishad. It has only 12 verses. So today we're going to look at verse number 4. Svapna-stha pragyah sapta ang ekonavims pravivikta-bhuk taijaso tiyah padah. The second quarter of the Dvitya Pad, he says, is tijasa, whose sphere of activity is the dream state, which is called Svapna. Who is conscious of the internal world of objects, who has 7 limbs and 19 mouths, and who enjoys the subtle objects of the mental world. So in the previous verse, we saw the waking state, our physical body, seeing through the ignorance of its own real nature, perceives a world of sense objects, deluded by its own false perceptions, experiences the waking state, Jagrata Avastha. And in this state, this Rishi called that personality as Vaishvana, the waking state. Now the same life force, withdrawing its playful coatings in the external world, identifies itself with the subtle body and creates a distinct personality called the dreamer, or according to this Rishi, Tejas. So Tejas has its own world of experiences in its dream. So in this mantra, there is an exhaustive nature of the dreamer mentioned. So dreamer enjoys the subtle part of the objects. But while dreaming, through the mind, this dream seems perfectly real. We all know that the dream world is nothing but a mental creation of the dreamer himself. It's like a mind is looking at the projections made by the mind. Just like in the waking state, we experience the world of sense objects. Our mind, through the senses, gathers impressions. And some of those impressions are in our mind. So during the dream, part of the dreamer's mind observes the impressions in another portion of the mind. Okay, so it's almost like one part of the mind is watching, the other part of the mind is projecting. The dreamer or the taijaso enjoys the subtle world of the objects. Because at that time, he is conscious only of the inner world, not the outer world. Totally disconnected from the outer world. So Tejas has for its sphere of activity the world of dreams. So Vaishnavar had the external world. Tejas has the inner world. And the 7 limbs and 19 mouths, they are the same as we discussed in the previous mantra. So Vaishnavar and the Tejas, the ego of the waker and the ego of the dreamer, are both parts of the spiritual entity in us. So pure consciousness or awareness in us identifying itself with the gross body acts the part of Vaishnavar and the same reality or the conscious principle when it's conditioned by the subtle body, it becomes the dreamer and experiences the dream world as a tejas. So I'm sure you can understand this. We go through these 2 stages every day. Waking state also, the dream state also. Now let's look at the next mantra. Yatra supto na kanchan kamam, kamyate na kanchan svapnam pashyati tat sushuptam, tat sushupta-stha ekibhutah, prajn ghan eshah anand-mayo, hi nanda-bhuk, ceto-mukhah, tritya pada. So this is the 3rd pad, tritya pad. That is the state of deep sleep, where the sleeper does not desire any objects, nor does he see any dream. The 3rd pad is the prajna, whose sphere is a deep sleep, in whom all experiences become unified. That means undifferentiated. Who is verily a homogeneous mass of consciousness, and who is the very gateway for the projection of the consciousness into the other 2 planes of consciousness, the dream and the waking. Sleep is a condition. Very little is known, at least in the Western philosophy. Our rishis, they have talked about it quite a bit though. The difficulty is that describing sleep, we cannot use the normal instruments of cognition. Because in deep sleep, our mind is sleeping too. Our intellect is sleeping too. In this deep sleep. So all that we know is that it is a state of a complete negation of all that we know of. Our knowledge of the world is only a sum total of our perceptions, which we gather from the views we gain through 5 senses. The senses which are given to us in this body. All that we know of the world of objects is the sum total of the reports which the senses give us. That means whatever eyes tell us, what the ears hear, what the nose smell. But sleep is a condition where the mind and intellect retire. So that's why it's a state of living in which all these apertures have closed down. Eyes are closed, ears are closed. So in sleep, we experience a mere all-around ignorance. Or you can say complete negativity. The only thing we experience in sleep is a state. Sleep over here means sushupti, the deep sleep. State which has neither form nor sound, nor taste, nor smell, nor touch. Nothing is there. In other words, the only thing we know in sleep is that we have no knowledge. So the scientific-minded materialist of the modern world indeed have to wait for even the discovery of a new language to express this realm. Because the language which we have uses these senses. But this is the place where sense organs dare not touch. They are not even available to touch that state. So that's why the best way we can define sushupti is which is said in this mantra, which is expressed in the language of negation. So the mantra says, the sleeper does not desire any objects. No desires there in sushupti, nor does he see any dream. So in the swapna, you are seeing the dream. In sushupti, there's no dream and there's no desire. So we are neither waking nor dreaming. That is the experience of sushupti. Contrasted with the previous 2 states of consciousness, the waking and the dream, here in the deep sleep state of consciousness, the entire awareness available in the human form is being consolidated and conserved. That's what he said, prajn, homogeneous. Because in the waking state, the same awareness is dissipated. We see something, then our attention gets moved into something else. We get disturbed. So it gets dissipated through the mind and the sense organs. It's like a lot of outer sense objects are there. It keeps on registering the knowledge of the things. So Some car is going, some person is saying, some colors we see, different weather, all kinds of information keeps on pouring inside us. And in the dream state also, the swapan, the consciousness in us is expressing itself in illuminating the thoughts of the mental world. That's why in the swapan, sometimes we get elated, sometimes we get afraid. All those expressions are there. And that we understand as a dream. But when we have transcended both these states of waking and dream, we are in a state which is called deep sleep. In this state, the consciousness in us is illuminating neither the gross objects of the outer world nor the subtler objects of the mental zone. So in the deep sleep state, the entire consciousness in us seems to have collected together in us. It's almost like a crystallized into one mass of awareness in the deep sleep. At this state of experience, our entire consciousness has become a homogeneous mass of awareness. This state of homogeneous consciousness is considered as a state of bliss also. None of the causes that create our mental agitation during the waking and the dream states is present here. That's why we feel rested and we feel blissful. It's not that in the deep sleep state we are actually aware of the bliss, because that is essential nature of us. But what happens is in the waking and the dream state, we compare our experiences. We keep on comparing. It isn't there, but we keep on comparing. Sometimes with our own experiences, sometimes with the experiences of others. Constantly we are just going through the good and the bad, the dualities. But in deep sleep state, that is not available. So that's why this great Upanishad is describing this state of consciousness as a mass of bliss. It is not so much to assert the experience of any positive bliss, but remember, there are no agitations there. No agitations. The mental agitation and the unrest are caused by the polarity, which comes from these objects of the world. Because we identify our joy with the sense objects, then we demand the acquisition of those objects. We want to maintain those objects. We want to enjoy those objects. And when we cannot get them, there's a mental agitation. In the deep sleep, it's none of that is there. No presence of the objects and no impressions of the objects. So there's no agitation. So sense objects of the world can neither give us joy nor can give us a sorrow actually. So in the deep sleep, they are there, but we are not connected with them. So they cannot give us joy or they cannot give us unhappiness. When we contact these objects, which are situated in the external world, we put a value on those objects. Only then these objects gain potency, if at all. Otherwise, a brick of gold is sitting there in the dream state, deep sleep state. But even if there's a filth sitting over there, no difference. So in the deep sleep state, our mind is not functioning. And our intellect is not extrovert. We are not conscious at all of the external world of the objects. We are not aware of them. They cannot tantalize us or charm us anyway. So they cannot create any kind of a agitation or any kind of a fluctuation in our mind. That is our deep sleep state. This is also called the Anandamaya Kosh. So sheath as the blissful. The Supreme Self, identifying itself with this, the deep sleep condition, is called pragya. Okay, this is one way to look at this pragya word. This pragya seeks its joys not in the external sense objects, as the waker does, nor in the inner subtler objects, as the dreamer does. In the sleep condition, he enjoys a fullness of joy. Joy because of the absence of sorrows. So pragya is the gateway of knowledge. They say that there has been highest poetry came out after the deep sleep. Lot of beautiful creation, because that stillness of the mind, no agitation in the mind. The philosophers came up with those great philosophies. From the sleep state, it is projected outward to illuminate the dream conditions. And when the projection increases, comes to the external world, and the same consciousness make it possible for us to know the world of objects outside. But then we withdraw ourselves. We draw our attention from the dream state. So interior to the inner world, where it becomes homogeneous. This is what he's talking about. So pragya is the third quarter of the self. Vaishvana, taijaso, and pragya. These are the terms this rishi is using for these three states of our experiences. Remember that. Do not get too confused about it. We go through this every day. Every day. We are wakeful and we go into the sleep, and part of that sleep is the deep sleep, sushupti. So whether you want to call it a jagrat, swapna, sushupti, or you want to call it a vaishvana, tejas, or pragya. Okay, these are different terms. Don't get confused. Let's look at one more verse today. Esh sarveshwar, esh sarvagye, esho antramesh yonihi, sarvasya prabhavapyoho hi bhutanam. This is the Lord of all. This is the knower of all. This is the inner controller. This is the source of all. So, Esha Sarveshwar, Esha Sarvagya. And this is that from which all things originate and in which they finally dissolve themselves. So, continuing the explanation of the state of consciousness in the deep sleep state, the Rishi is giving us one more extra mantra actually. Because it is very difficult for an ordinary mind to sufficiently detach from his own ego, or to become aware of this condition in the deep sleep state. It is very easy to understand the personality which we have in the waking state. It is difficult for an ordinary person to understand the dreamer in him, and yet it is possible if you put a little extra conscious effort. We can grasp that personality, but very difficult for an ordinary mind to understand the sleeper in him. The ego at the time of sleep, it's very hard to understand. Because we are used to understanding everything through our senses, through our mind, through our intellect. When the senses are not functioning, or at least we are not aware of them, we are not getting any information, the mind is still, intellect is not functioning, we don't know what it is. So deep sleep is a condition in which neither the organs of knowledge function nor the knowledge acts. So at that moment where we are in a world of our own, somewhere else we are. Just think about it. Where are you? You're not in a dream world. You're not in a wakeful world. Where are you? When we are in a world of our own, where none of our known instruments of knowledge is available for our experience. We seem to be generally in a strange realm, unknown and unknowable. So these rishis, they have a compassion for us. And that's why this extra mantra is given over here to explain this deep sleep state. The awareness in the deep sleep state, as he said in the last verse, it's homogeneous mass of pure consciousness, illuminating nothing in particular, except one single idea. What is that? I do not know. I do not know. This state of affairs is generally called avidya. When we don't know. So in the Vedic knowledge or the language, the deep sleep state, the self is identifying itself with the causal body, avidya. I don't know. So this bliss which we feel, this bliss is not coming from the knowledge. This bliss is coming because there's no agitations, lack of agitations in the mind. So in this deep sleep state, the consciousness in us all gathers together, illuminating nothing in particular, except a condition of continuous negativity. In fact, it is the Lord of all, because if this consciousness were not there, None of us could have been know this, that I don't know anything. Or even to know that I have a deep sleep. So that's why this Rishi is calling it the knower of all, because the knowledge of the waking state or the dream state or even the deep sleep state would not have been ours, but for the fact of this illuminating reality, the divine spark of life, pure light, which is vibrant inside us. So the controller within, it is evident that there is something which is experiencing it all. That I had a deep sleep. Something inside us stays awake. Senses are sleeping, the mind is sleeping, intellect is sleeping, ego is sleeping, something is awake. That's who we are. The consciousness in us is certainly the womb of all things. Because if this consciousness were not in us, neither the sun, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor the entire world of objects, nor the world of the ideas would have been existent. They have a look of existence only with reference to our capacity to be aware of them. They are there because we feel them. If consciousness is not in us, the entire world of objects will be as non-existent as the pair of horns of any one of us. We don't have the horns. They don't exist. But the same way, if we really cannot see any of it, they don't exist either. When this conscious principle is projected out through the mind and intellect, through the sense organs, then it expresses itself in the awareness of the world of objects and the ideas and thoughts. And if you remove this awareness or this consciousness, the body will no more illuminate. So in the scriptural language, that the world outside and the world within rise up from this pure consciousness. That's what these Vedic seers are telling us. They exist in this consciousness. When the consciousness is withdrawn, merges back into the consciousness itself. It's almost like if we have a pencil, it's like a pencil of sunlight. It's like a beam of sunlight, you can say. You make it pass through a prism. We have all done it when we were little. We find it emerging out, dispersing into the colors of the rays. The 7 colors of the light, we can see in that band, all emerging from the light that has penetrated the prism. Where did they exist? Those colors, they existed in the light. Otherwise, where did they come from? They do exist in the light, but then they all merge back again into the light. So this dispersal of the one beam into the 7 colors is only a mischief of the prism. which obstructed and transformed the real direction of the light. The same way, the consciousness in us, it projects forth through the prism of our mind and intellect. We seem to acquire a knowledge of polarity in the world. So if Atma, the divinity, was not here, we won't be able to see any of it. And this is the truth mentioned in our Vedas. And by the process of a spiritual technique, if we can transcend this equipment, and what is this equipment? Equipment of our body, mind, and intellect. The awareness projected forth from us shall merge with the consciousness that is ever present. Around us also, and about us also. So we not only see the Paramatma everywhere, we can see the Atma, our own self also. And with this process, these rishis are saying that we come to realize the all-pervading reality in the names and the forms. Tree is a tree because we call it a tree. We look at the form and we look at it, we call it, it's a tree. Or in the trees also, we call different trees by different names. But what divinity is in there? Through this Vedic process, you can see that. This idea of this mantra has been explained by many rishis. Because this Upanishad is very terse. The idea is not elaborated much. So that's why there have been many rishis. They gave the commentaries on this. So maybe next week I will try to bring out some of the commentaries by certain other rishis also, how they explain this deep sleep state. Deep sleep state. I wanted to go through this Upanishad. First I thought quickly, 12 verses, we can finish it. But I see your interest. You want to understand it a little better. You want to practice it also. So that's why I think I'm going to go through some of the commentaries also with you. What do the other rishis, other saints, when they experienced it, what do they say about it? See, just like the waking state, we look at so many things. We talk, we go, we experience. Our dreams also, we talk about, we want to analyze, we want to know what it is. But how about the deep sleep? Do we wonder about that? Because in the waking state, we are in the wakeful world. In the dream state, we are in a dream world. Where are we when we are in Sushupti? Ponder upon that. I want you to think about it this week, and next week I will definitely talk more on this with the help of some other verses, and I might send you those verses through our WhatsApp group also, if I find some verses which are understandable by us. Those rishis, they have done a great job, but can we understand? Can we grasp the idea right now? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.